said I needed a suit.
Yeah, the ceremonial armor from Concha's temple, not Psycho Colonel Sanders.
There's got to be some kind of superhero fashion industry rising to power in the MCU at this point. Throughout the ever-expanding films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, characters we've come to know and love have gone through change after change. Others take a large departure from their comic counterparts, and sometimes these look great, and others, well, when a character has been around for a while, they just have to show up with some new threads time and time again. From new capes to shoes and haircuts, and occasionally a full-on color scheme change, let's take a look at the best and worst character redesigns in the MCU right now. The God of Mischief has been through quite a bit in the MCU, and with each nearly eternal life crisis, a man of his theatricality has updated his look along the way. The first time we see Loki was definitely a faithful adaptation from the comics, though not the most faithful as we would come to find out. Along with his horned helmet and flowing green robes, he made for a great villain in the first Thor film and the Avengers. His look didn't update from then to the Dark World, given his lack of options in prison, but eventually he gained a Sicarian update. The most notable design changes for Loki come from his Disney Plus show, when not only himself but a number of Loki variants were given incredible designs both unique and nodding to the comics. Sylvie's got a great look, with one of the horns of her tiara being broken to show her life on the run. There was President Loki and Kid Loki, Frost Giant Loki and Boastful Loki who adopted the weapon of his brother. Finally, of course, there's perhaps the greatest design of a character in the MCU with classic Loki. This is a direct adaptation of Loki's first appearance brought to life by Richard E. Grant. The Loki we are all most familiar with, at least the one who is still alive, had updated his look as well. After he was taken, he began working for the TVA, and was given a suit, tie, and variant jacket. After his adventures with Sylvie, he has kind of taken on an overworked accountant look, but somehow it really works for him. If there's one man who knows about style, it's Steve Rogers. His many outfit and design changes in the MCU have been quite interesting to follow. He changes suits with new designs, and sometimes new technology in every film he's in. But there's a few that really stand out. The first was his World War II makeshift outfit that he wore when he went to rescue the members of the 107th Infantry. Keeping the shirt of his classic look he wore on the USO tour, he added an old-fashioned helmet and kept his shield that wasn't made of vibranium yet, but was strong enough to stop a punch from Red Skull, and matched to a T his first shield from the comics. His other most notable design change was what I like to call his "I've been on the run for almost 3 years" look, better known as Bearded Cap. Wearing his suit from Civil War that had seen battle and was torn in many places, with the white star faded and chainmail exposed, Bearded Cap has never looked more rugged and quite frankly intimidating. There are some characters on this list who have been through quite the roller coaster when it comes to their MCU design. One of the most prominent is Emil Blonsky, also known as Abomination. There's obviously his initial soldier design, where he's just a guy who looks like Tim Roth in an army uniform. Then his transformation occurs at the end of The Incredible Hulk. When he is injected with Bruce's blood in combination with the Super Soldier Serum, Blonsky grows to enormous size, grows spikes out of his spine and arms, and essentially turns into a slightly off-yellow rock-looking person. It was a choice. This Abomination barely had any resemblance to his comic counterpart, but then he reappeared some 20-odd films later. This time, in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Abomination appeared fighting Wong. This time with a more green hue and ear fins that marked one of the best looking CGI villains, who I can't wait to see back in action once She-Hulk comes around. Electro has had a very short time in the MCU, but taking into account his whole time on screen shows some incredible design decision making when it comes to his look. His comic counterpart is admittedly one of the goofier looking villains, so I understand the departure to an all-blue mess in a black jumpsuit in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but it just did not feel right. When he entered the MCU in Spider-Man No Way Home, he got his body back.
Kinda like who I am here.
And a new look along with it. He came without clothes, so the Jamie Foxx-looking villain borrowed some nearby electrical workers' clothes. Then, when he got his hands on an arc reactor, he developed a device that could hold it and power him up. It was truly a cool look, and they even managed to give us a quick nod to his lightning bolt-shaped mask. Overall, it was just a great MCU upgrade. There are several villains who do their comic-to-screen designs proud. And then there's Batroc the Leaper. Nothing really against it, but we go from a guy in the comics who wears a big yellow mask and purple spandex to a professional fighter in a jumpsuit. At least he started with a tactical vest and pants of the same color scheme. But then during his reappearance in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it looked like he was being sponsored by Nike. For someone who should have just been a goofy side villain that was built up to be a little bit more, they should have just gone all the way and given us some kind of nod to his original look. The Red Skull is one of my favorite comic villains, and his initial design in Captain America: The First Avenger was spot on, especially when you consider the horrible 90s TV movie. Johann Schmidt, after experimenting on himself with a serum created by Dr. Erskine, saw all the skin fall off his face, leaving nothing but a noseless red skull behind. It truly was a very comic-accurate design that worked and was unbelievable. At the end of the first Avenger, the Red Skull disappeared, leaving all fans to speculate when he might return. His next appearance and design was enough to give a pleasant surprise to audiences everywhere. He returned in a simple, shrouded black cloak as the Keeper of the Soul Stone in Avengers Infinity War. Obviously, being given a new purpose came with a new look. It's incredibly simple, but it was just enough to shock everyone and still make sure Red Skull was dressing for the job he wanted. One of the most impressive things that Spider-Man No Way Home did was fulfill fan demands 20 years in the making that we had all kind of forgotten about. Don't get me wrong, the 2002 Green Goblin look is iconic, but everyone couldn't help but wonder why you would cover up Willem Dafoe's face when the man could literally transform himself into a goblin. Well, leave that to the MCU. Shortly after Norman's arrival, he smashed that mask in an alleyway and borrowed some sweats to cover up his goblin armor. Eventually, the Goblin retook Norman's body, and during one of the most brutal fights we've seen with Peter Parker, the purple hoodie got all torn up, leading to an incredible new look for the Green Goblin. For the final fight, he would add some tactical goggles, but overall, it's a classic example of how sometimes less can be more when you have an incredible actor portraying an iconic comic book villain. Sometimes, character changes can really affect the design of them in the MCU. Most of the time, this really works well, and others not so much. Personally, I think Ultron is an underrated villain, and at times his design is pretty close to that in the comics. But at others, it just feels off. Ultron's motive in Avengers Age of Ultron is to replace humanity with metal, and only the strong will survive. Essentially, he seeks to replace humanity with himself, but he also desires to be more human. That's why he created Vision, a much more humanoid android, with the intention of uploading his consciousness into him. When this fails, however, Ultron does use vibranium to build his final form.
Have you been juicing? A little vibranium cocktail?
Which is honestly a really bloated looking robot who is trying desperately to look like a human.
I'm sorry, it's just I don't understand. Don't compare me!
For me, something just really feels off about this particular design of Ultron. Many of his henchmen robots look more menacing to me, but this one, who Tony even pokes fun at, definitely missed something about the design. The God of Thunder has been around for thousands of years, and naturally that comes with a couple shakeups in his look. Let's skip over the blonde eyebrows. The cape, the armor, even the quick appearance of the helmet is all very Shakespearean and comic accurate. One of Thor's coolest redesigns came in Thor Ragnarok, when the one and only Stan Lee gave him a fresh new cut.
Please, kind sir, do not cut my hair.
And he got some new Sicarian weapons, garb, and gear. This was cool, especially when he added the eye patch. Lastly, Thor's latest transformation was unique in that he lost his six-pack, but he gained a sick braided Viking beard. It also looks like he might be updating it yet again in Love and Thunder. The greatest villain in the MCU as seen to date has gone through a number of design changes since his first grinning appearance in the Avengers. Bringing Thanos from the comics to the screen was always going to be a challenge, but they really wound up with something special. Beyond just his few cameos, in Infinity War, his redesign gave him a more human face, minus the wrinkly chin. His battle armor makes him one of the most intimidating forces in the MCU, and he has the actions to back it up. As far as I'm concerned, Thanos is the gold standard in terms of designing large CGI characters to serve as the main villain for a culmination of 3 phases of spectacular movie making. Drax's design is not the best, and I do mean when he's moving, and not when he's keeping so still that he's invisible. When you look at the comic version of Drax the Destroyer, he is much larger, with his red tattoos appearing like war paint all over his body, making him an intimidating force. As far as clothes go in the MCU, he just wears pants and no shirt. The makeup team does a really great job, but essentially Drax looks just like Dave Bautista painted green, with some like red tattoos on his body. Nothing against the hard work that brought Drax to the big screen. I just think his look and his many appearances contribute to him looking less like a destroyer and more like someone you just want to hug and tell him everything's gonna be alright. The new Captain America deserved an upgraded design. One of the greatest departures from his comic look, which included literal feathers, the MCU found the greatest way to update a hero. Turning his wings from real bird wings to a military flight suit was a stroke of genius. It turned a very impractical costume into a functioning practical one. He got some minor upgrades and style changes, but obviously his greatest redesign came when he took on the role of Captain America, with a fresh new suit made by the Wakandans. It's a slick, great look that the leader of any hero team would be proud to have. One of the original MCU characters who's still kicking around, James Rhodes hasn't had quite the outfit change that his best friend has. But on the whole, he looks pretty good. Rhodey's War Machine armor usually looks pretty great with the machine gun and everything. However, there's one redesigned suit that Rhodey wears that I just can't get behind. When he emerges from the rubble of the Avengers compound in Avengers Endgame, he's wearing a new suit that's designed to go to space. However, it's just the definition of going overboard. It's bulky, overly colorful, and Rhodey looks downright strange in it. Most of the time I'm a huge fan, I just think this suit was a swing and a miss. From humble beginnings as Jarvis, Vision has grown into quite the complex character with one of the coolest looks in the MCU. Initially departing from his comic design to adopt a more robotic yet humanoid look, Ultron initially designed him with the intent to transfer his consciousness. As the movies went on, Vision gained the ability to change his own appearance, adding a cape, wearing sweaters, and eventually looking entirely like Paul Bettany. Today, Vision's newest redesign pays homage to his West Coast Avengers look, as he reappeared as a weapon built by Sword, all in white. It's sleek and extremely intimidating, and we can't wait for more. Hawkeye's newest look is great, but it didn't start that way. I realized we couldn't get the exact ridiculous H mask from the comics, but something a little more inspired would have been great. Instead, the Hawkeye we usually get throughout the MCU is just in a black combat suit. He could just be any SHIELD agent if he wasn't holding a bow and arrow. Then there was his stint as Ronin. The suit was cool, but that mohawk? Yikes. His newest look, designed by Kate Bishop, is definitely a step in the right direction. There is perhaps no character who updates his look more than Iron Man.
What is that, like Mark 15?
Yeah.
In almost every new film he appears in, he's rocking a new Mark version of his Iron Man suit. The Mark I was iconic, the Mark II was sleek, the Mark III was one of the best looks transferred from page to screen. Between the Mark 42, the Hulkbuster, and his nanotech suits, Tony has the most stylish form of butt-kicking of any hero. He's so good at designing weapons of war, and making them look awesome that he even constantly is redesigning and upgrading members of the Avengers. Tony is essentially the most expensive high-tech fashion designer in the MCU. If they had an Edna mode, it would probably be him. Yondu was one of the coolest looking characters in the MCU before his untimely demise, even when he looked like Mary Poppins. His look was definitely a departure from his comic counterpart, but I think that was for the better. His comic look was a more pure blue, with a comically large red mohawk. The MCU made him look much more like a blue space pirate, with long Ravager robes and a small red device resembling his comic fin, but this time with the purpose of controlling the Yaka arrow. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, he upgraded to a much larger fin, as a nod to his original comic appearance, but still with the rugged good looks every adopted space pirate dad should have. Spider-Man's journey through the MCU has been incredible. Oh, by the way, I'm talking about Peter 1.
Peter 1, Peter 2,
Peter 2.
Peter 3.
Peter 3.
All right, let's do this. Ready?
Wait.
His initial design actually looked like it was supposed to. You know, like a high schooler made it. Not everyone likes his Iron Man Jr. upgrades, but you've got to admit they look pretty sweet. From Tony's first design that Peter wears in Civil War to the Iron Spider, the different designs of Peter's spider outfit have been unique and impressive each time. Most recently, Peter has brought it back to basics, perfecting his sewing skills. Without the Shroud of Iron Man, or anything really now that no one knows who he is, he can form his own spider legacy with his sleek new look. I think one of the worst character designs came and went in one movie, and that's unfortunately Quicksilver.
You didn't see that coming?
He looked rather silly from the comics, but his redesign in the MCU could have done so much more than what they did. At the end of the day, Quicksilver became just a guy with badly dyed hair and a mustache, whose idea of suiting up was putting on a running shirt and sneakers. All I'm saying is some armor probably would have helped a little bit, no? Wanda Maximoff has perhaps been on the greatest emotional roller coaster of any character, and her design has definitely followed suit. Bringing Wanda's original comic look to the screen was nearly impossible, though we did get a hint at it when she dressed up as a Sokovian fortune teller for Halloween. She started as a girl in a red jacket. It was kind of boring design, but if only we had known where it would grow to. During her avenging days, she was given a longer jacket and tactical clothing she was able to wear when in the field. She wore this outfit all throughout Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. As her power grew, so did the fierceness of the design of her character. However, in her own show, WandaVision, she wound up with perhaps the coolest upgrade in design any character had seen. Taking on the official moniker of the Scarlet Witch, came complete with a magical costume that paid homage to her original look, while updating it for the future. It's one of the best current designs of a character, and I can't wait until she goes all crazy again wearing it. Whether they're in tattered robes or the newest Stark tech, the MCU heroes and villains definitely stand out in a crowd. Which character do you think has gone through the greatest redesign? And which one is in desperate need of one?